Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order at 3 o'clock. This is the meeting of the Bethel Public Library Policy. And everyone's present from the committees, so that's good. Will someone make a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of June 9th?
So moved.
Was that Tia? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you.
Hold on one moment, Robin. I just have to pull up the minutes for a second.
Sure.
Okay, so from the last meeting, I need Chris and Terry to abstain from the minutes.
I abstain.
Okay. Is Chris on mute?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, Chris, great. Okay, and now you can keep going, Robin.
Okay. Let me just get the agenda. Here, hold on. Okay, so next we're going to do the personnel policy review. If you remember, we referred this, the changes that we had proposed to our council, and he's reviewed the proposed revisions, and he's got some revisions of his own to add, or had some revisions of his own that he added. And I'm going to ask Megan to walk us through, since she had the conversations with him, and then she can point out to us where changes were made. We can discuss them before we refer this to the full board.
Okay, just give me 1 moment. Okay, so if you'll notice, John Shea went in and added equal opportunity employment information, discrimination, harassment, sexual harassment. So just to clarify that quick, and then Tia will go into it. All of these things we were originally referencing the town policies for, and John felt that we should really have them in our own policy and more up-to-date language. So he added these, and he called Phyllis at town hall and verified with her that this content was okay with them before moving forward. So the town has already seen this information and has approved it.
I have one question. Well, it's in general, but under 2. Application of personnel policy, the paragraph that starts, employees can raise concerns and make reports to any supervisor, the library director, or the town of Bethel, first selectman, or the first selectman's designate. So if I understand that correctly, that means that the board of directors has nothing to do with this, and it will never come before the board of directors.
Can you give me the page number?
Page 1.
Oh,
Down at the way bottom.
No, well, I don't know where it is on your thing, because
okay, so this is
it's 2. It's number 2. Application of personnel policy. The paragraph and the last paragraph that starts with employees can raise concerns and make reports to any supervisor, the library director, or the town of Bethel first selectman, or the first selectman's designee without fear of reprisal. My question is, does the board of directors have any role in this? Because the way this reads is that it goes to you,
yep,
and it goes to the town.
They can block a word and check it and take this.
And since my understanding is the town told us that the board of directors were in charge of the employees, since we were the ones who had to negotiate the contract and are the people who the union will go to about things, why are we not part of this? Not that, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled if we're not.
so would everyone like me to add in library director, comma, library board?
I sort of think we have to be,
And
right? Or
you go from the right to the left. So you gotta push
there's
that.
some kind of conversation going on in the background with somebody?
Right.
My husband.
Okay, you want to mute yourself
Yeah.
unless you're talking? I just noticed that. There's a couple of places where it just goes to the town and all the rest, but it never comes to the board of directors. And I just think that
Is that
that's,
because it has to go to the library director before it goes to the library board?
that makes perfect sense, that it would go to the director before it went to the board.
Yeah.
But
It
I would
does
think,
further in. It does further in. It goes to the director. And then
So I
they're
think
not
because it
happy
has to go to the
board.
director first.
Right.
Also too, up until now, the discrimination, harassment, all of that has always gone to the town. I don't think the library, because we've been using the town policies up until now, so the library board's never been
and like I
referenced.
said, I'm perfectly fine with us being out of it. I just wanted to bring up the point that further in the document, it brings in the board of directors under complaints and any other concerns that employees
I
have.
think because those were not tied to the town's policies, and this is my assumption. But these policies were town policies that we relied on. But I'm fine with putting it in. It's to the board, the committee to decide.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it stood out for me. Any thoughts?
Well, we do talk in the grievance section about the board.
Yeah.
Right.
We do.
And that's because the town doesn't take care of our grievances. That only goes as high as the board before it goes
Right.
to the union.
So is this is just, this is not limited to the discrimination or harassment. This is in general, the application of the policy, this section. It does, you're right, Tia, it does seem to contradict what we say later.
It does. I mean, I checked it 2 or 3 times just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Like I said, I'm fine if we're not in there. I just think we need to raise the point and have the discussion. And if the library board is out of it, that's fine. But I do think since this could go into some kind of, my thought process was, since if there was a sexual discrimination claim, and it went through that process, but the board wasn't aware of it, but the board then has any grievance. So if it went from the sexual harassment to a grievance part of the process, we would have been left out at the earlier part, and it just seemed to be contradictory.
Does the committee want me to put it in?
I think absolutely we should. It's better to have it than not have it.
Yeah.
However, they don't have to bring it to the board, the way this reads.
Well, they don't have to bring it to anybody.
Correct, but out of this, they could bring it to any of the following people. And raise concerns and make reports to any supervisor, the library director, the board of director, the selectman, or the selectman's designate. But it gives them choices. I think we should add it. That's my role.
Yeah, see, our role later on is really appellate. You know, if the employee isn't satisfied, then they can appeal to the board. I think that's where our role is. Tia, you've looked at it more closely, I think. Is that your understanding based on comparing the 2 sections or the 2 parts of the policy?
Say again, I'm sorry.
It looks to me like in looking at through this in section 12, grievance procedure, that the board, nobody goes directly to the board unless an appeal. I mean, or no one goes directly to the board. The board handles appeals.
Yeah, I mean, that's all part, and that's all spelled out in the union contract as well.
Procedure.
All that procedural stuff. I'm just talking about up front, just talking about, the equal opportunity and the issues about concerns. It just struck me as odd that we were not a part of that process. And as you're saying, we're not part of that process today, so maybe it just stays the way it has been.
Well, I don't see any harm in adding it.
No,
I mean,
no,
because
it's
if
optional.
you felt that it should go back to the director, you would bounce it back to the director, or if you felt
Right.
that the director was not the appropriate person, you would pass it on to the Board of Selectmen. So I don't see any harm in putting it in.
Okay.
All right, so if everyone's in agreement with that, does anybody have any concerns moving through all of the harassment components? Then there's a section added on responsibility of the first selectman designee, and that ties back to the section we were originally looking at. Then there's a sexual harassment training for supervisors. The town oversees that annually. So that gets us through all the new additions. Any questions?
I'm sorry.
That's why you're sitting across from
I went through this with a fine tooth comb because we just had something we needed to deal with, and it's top of mind for me. In something else, not here, obviously. On page 4, under the complaint procedure, the paragraph is called complaint procedure. So just to make sure that, again, this talks about if the allegation or concern involves the library director. Last sentence, second to the last sentence, well, second to the last line, it says involves the library director or the employee is otherwise uncomfortable reporting such to the library director, to the first selectman's office or whatever. Should the board be included as a place that they could come for that complaint?
Or, so like that, whoops.
It's any person who has observed or otherwise becomes aware of conduct prohibited by this policy should bring the matter to the attention of the library director, or if the allegation or concern involves the library director or the employee is otherwise uncomfortable reporting it such to the library director, to the first selectman's designee or the first selectman, should the library board be considered as one of those elements?
So I added it at the bottom.
Oh, you did? Okay,
So
I'm
if
sorry.
everyone, does anybody object to that? Anybody in the room?
No.
Okay.
Okay. And the selectman's office takes care of the sexual harassment stuff, so we don't have to create anything new or.
No, every employee is required to sign the calendar.
Yay. Happiness.
Okay, anything else from that section?
I can just say it was well worth going to John and spending the money.
Yeah.
He earned his money this time.
Okay, so it's a little confusing telling which edits are our edits, which edits are his edits. So anything that's red and underlined with dots leading to a note or an edit note are his. Let me find the next section. If I pass it, please let me know. Okay, so probationary period. I just put back in the satisfactory part. Not sure why it was removed. I don't remember why we removed it, but I put it back in if everyone's okay with that.
Well, where are we at now?
Letter F, probationary period on page 10.
Can I ask a question about page 7 before we get there? Hold on.
Is that something old or something new?
Page 8, under library director E, it's under the section that's called procedures for filling vacancies. And this may have been there before and I just didn't realize it.
Letter E,
Letter E under library director.
okay,
I have it on page 8.
yep.
Okay. And it talks about that the time of employment, the terms of the agreement established at the time of hiring plus any other considerations with the library director may negotiate with the library board to put into a contract agreement to cover 1 or more years. Is the board comfortable with offering a contract as opposed to just regular terms of employment? I know we didn't do that with you.
No, because there was no reason to.
Right.
You may hire someone where that is necessary. I would leave it in,
Okay.
because it gives you flexibility.
I just wanted the board to understand that then means that if you have a contract and it says to cover 1 or more years, a 1-year contract is a pretty onerous thing for a board this size or this kind of a board to take on. So I just was concerned about the term of that, 1 or more years. I'm not sure you would ever want to agree.
I've seen this take place in other libraries where they've done short-term agreements with directors when they can't compensate for salary. So in the first year, they'll give them something extra that'll be eliminated after the first year. It's nice to have for negotiation.
I just want to make sure this board understands that that's an obligation, potential obligation that they are taking on.
But it's not necessarily, Tia, the length of employment, it's a term.
Yeah, exactly. No, I understand that it's the term. The issue is you then have to begin your negotiations prior to that 1 year. And if it passes, then there are some issues that could have been covered in the contract that, could put the board in a situation where, or the library director in a situation where the negotiation is not, is more favored to one side over the other. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that that's something that's in here.
Does
And so-
anyone have a problem with that? You're not looking to change it. You're looking to see if anyone else has an issue with
If
it.
anyone has an issue and if people are aware that is, because this is going to be a public document, so anyone can see this, anyone can read it. And so that's what we are committing ourselves to. Because in most business, in most business situations, unless there's, usually it's a multi-year contract. A 1 year sort of implies that there may be, as you're saying, Megan, there may be some issues that are.
But you're not
that are there.
required to do it. So I look at it as that it's not saying that you're required to create a
No,
contract.
I agree with that. I just want to make sure the board understands that that's something that they're agreeing to.
Well, what we're agreeing to is is that we could do a 1-year contract, we could do a 20-year contract. We decide.
Yes.
If there So I think Megan's saying there's circumstances that make sense to have that 1 year. And it's not just the 1 year contract, it's terms or provisions within the contract that may only last a year.
So does anybody object to this statement or feel it needs to be modified or removed?
I think it gives us flexibility, and I don't think it binds us to anything that we should be concerned about.
I just hope everybody agrees to the contract or to negotiating that when it comes time to do it.
Well, it's been in the contract for at least a decade. Has anybody challenged it thus far?
Lynn did.
Yeah, she did.
And did
Oh,
it
it got really messy.
But I mean, did it give you cause now to want to remove it? Because if it did, then we should.
I'm not talking about removal. I'm just
Okay.
talking about the issue of it saying 1 or more years. My concern is the 1 year aspect of it. Can be an onerous thing for the board because as they're moving through the year, that 1 year,
So would you like that 1 year to be removed?
removed, or it's or a multiple year contract, something like that.
Tia, can you explain very briefly what the issue was with Lynn or are we not comfortable doing
Actually, that would really not be appropriate.
Okay.
No,
This is
that's,
Right.
that we
All
have
right,
to
so-
go into
so-
executive session for that.
example, we might have a direct, and I have no idea if this is what the issue is. We might have a director who wants a 1-year contract and we say, no, we want it a 2-year contract and not doing it for 1 year. And then the director says, well, it says here that you could do a 1 year. I mean, is that the point?
That's the point. That's
Well,
the point.
Wouldn't our response be, well, we're doing a 2-year contract. We don't agree to a 1 year in this situation.
So what if we just ended it at contract agreement and didn't put
Right.
any kind of term on it
Term on it, yeah.
and left it open? So if we have someone we want to give a contract to for 5 years, it's the board's decision.
I mean, I've seen a lot of times, I mean, I've been in situations where people constantly want a 1 year, so that every year they're forcing people to go back and renegotiate things. And that's my only point, is as soon as you say one year, somebody can do that. I wouldn't disagree with Mary about just taking over the contract agreement and just ending it there, and then you.
Couldn't they argue for a 6-month one though? Doesn't this at 1 year at least say nothing less than a year can be negotiated?
Or something that said nothing less than a year. The point more is you want to make sure you're not in a situation where you have to keep negotiating. I know it sounds like a minor point, but.
Well, if the concern is by giving us the flexibility with this language, someone might say, well, you gave yourself the flexibility, therefore you must enter into a contract with the length that I want. Then let's just end it at agreement. And then we still can do whatever we want. We just aren't like tipping people off that it could be a 1 year contract.
Right. I'm fine with that.
I think it sounds.
All right. Anything else?
Sorry, Megan.
Just keeping us on task. We have a lot to do.
We do.
All right. Anybody object to me adding back in satisfactorily to F probationary period on page 10? I'm going to
Instead of introductory, is that what you want?
I don't see the word introductory. I just see satisfactorily.
Oh, I'm in the wrong.
It's just putting a word back in that
I
we
think-
can.
Wasn't it the working test that went back in?
That's the next paragraph down. So he
Oh.
added that back as well.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
Next section. Bear with me, the computer loads a little slower when I'm in sharing mode, so it takes a little bit longer to get down to the section. And if I miss anything, please let me know. Okay, so now we get down to page 21. The paragraph before section 14. So John and I discussed this. He said you don't need to put this in the policy. I asked that we do for the first couple of years of the union contract because the administrative side of the library is going to be juggling 2 different contracts. So having this in here is a helpful way to the administration to remember to complete this task. So we don't have to keep this in indefinitely, but having it in for a few years while we're going back and forth between a contract and a policy would be helpful.
So what are we exactly?
We're referencing our obligation to the union to provide the employee list.
Oh.
So we had this in here when we made our revisions.
Right.
John just put in a note asking about it, so I wanted to reference it now. So you can see everything that John and I discussed. John was very pleased with what he saw. He thought the committee did a very good job, so there were not a lot of edits that were required.
Everybody pat yourself on the back.
So the next section we get to is on page 26. It is letter M before we get to holidays. And he put in here, I think this language would apply to all separation, not just termination. So he has removed termination and inserted separation instead. Is everyone okay with that? All right. Then he also, within each section where we reference the collective bargaining agreement, he just took out the unit information, so that way we don't have to update the policy each time the union contract is updated. So the next issue he rose was, is it possible that someone would hit the 680 mark, and that is for sick leave, which is the state number of hours, while still on probationary and hence not a regular employee? So what he's referring to is the amount of time before someone becomes a regular employee to receive sick time, but the law says at 680 hours. So he adjusted for that within this paragraph that's highlighted. Why isn't it coming up on yours? Okay, the highlighted paragraph. So the third full month of employment following the month of hire, instead of doing 6 months, which is what the town allows for anyway. So I thought that was an appropriate change. Yeah,
Sorry.
that's why you brought cookies.
On page 28,
Go back up.
back up, just one page, under sick leave uses, and this refers to a number of places where we talk about a spouse's illness. Does that cover civil, common law, whatever term we would use there? Because it talks about a spouse's illness. It's, in a couple of other places it talks about spouses, and then in one place it starts to talk about common law. So I didn't know, did we need to put that in?
Where do we have the common law provision? Do you remember?
There is one further in, let me see if I can find it. Bear with me.
Maybe death?
It is on, I know we talked about it. So, it might have been in the death section, yeah. Death section, that's not what I was going to do.
What is it? Yeah, it's under the funeral leave.
Pardon me?
Under the funeral leave.
Funeral leave.
Is what, what page is that?
8 maybe?
It's on page 34.
Looking to see if Connecticut has a definition for spouse.
Yeah, I looked up the common law and spouse and all that, and I'm not being a lawyer, I didn't really know. But it does say here, as required by Connecticut law, partners in a civil union will be considered on the same basis as a married spouse for this provision. So my question was, did we want to do that for sick leave? Because I know that's come up in the past where you've had somebody's domestic partner is ill and, they're helping, or I'm probably
Well,
using.
ask the group.
No, I am.
Well, what is the town having? I mean, have we copied the town policy?
To be honest, I don't have it with me. I was only really prepared to discuss John's notes. I'm very sorry, but I don't have it.
I'm sorry, it's just, that's one of those things that just, comes up, and I want to make sure from your perspective that it gets covered, because, you know, you're doing it for funerals, would you do it for somebody in a sick leave situation? And what does anybody think?
Can you tell me what section it's addressed to you? I know it's page. But
It's on page 38. I think
what
it
section is it though? 'Cause
It's under, I'm sorry, page 34, funeral leave. The last sentence says,
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it on on a separate document, my iPad, and it doesn't have page numbers. So what section is it?
21.
21. Okay. Well, if we've got it there, we might as well. Is the section we're now talking about the only other place where spouses are mentioned on sick leave?
Well, let me see what the union contract says too, because we negotiated that language. And I don't think we want to have two separate sick
definitions
leaves,
or
so
whatever, yeah.
and that I do have with me. So let me
Okay,
check
thank
that.
you.
Sick leave, so.
The statute, I thought I looked at this last time when we were going through this, and the statute says that civil unions have been merged into marriage. That was when same-sex marriages were permitted. So it says two persons who are parties to a civil union that has not been dissolved or annulled or merged into marriage by operation of law shall be deemed to be married said date, and such civil union shall be merged into marriage by operation of law. So it looks like you're a spouse. If you were party to a civil union as of 2009, you became or 2010, you became a spouse. So it may be unnecessary to have it in the other part.
I don't see anything in the union contract.
There's absolutely nothing.
We don't.
I know.
We don't even
I
address
didn't-
it in the union contract.
I didn't think we had. I know it had come up at some point, but I couldn't find it.
It's not in there at all. It's the wrong sick leave.
So are you saying then, Robin, for the purpose of the way this gets interpreted for accrued sick leave or the purpose of a sick leave, if you're doing it for a spouse, that would be your domestic partner as well?
It would be your whoever you were civilly unionized with. I don't know if domestic partner is the right term, but that if you were a party to a civil union, you're now a spouse. I think that's what that means. So I think you could take it out in the other section because it's by operation of law you're a spouse. But
Okay,
that's
but what if you, okay, so let me just ask this. To be in a civil union, do you have to have declared that you're in a civil union? I mean, if you're just somebody who's living with somebody for 25 years.
That's common law. That's not the same thing.
Okay, that's kind of what I'm
So, yeah, common law marriage is length of time living together. Civil union is you got a certificate. It was like a before the marriage laws changed, that was as good as you got, and you got certain rights. But common law marriage is something entirely other
Okay,
different.
so, all right, so then perhaps my term of art was incorrect then. So if the person who you live with is ill under this accrued sick leave, are we
So you mean
saying?
like a roommate, if your roommate is sick?
Well, that's why I'm asking the question, because, you know, I mean, not necessarily roommate, but your partner or whatever. I mean, so.
But you have to be careful. You open up a can of worms. It could be your mother, or it could be your neighbor, or somebody that long-term you want to take care of.
I think it's a matter beyond our purview here. I'm not sure that Connecticut has common law marriage. You know, we can't make these decisions, I don't think, as a policy committee. So, you know, the only thing I can say is the civil union language looks to be obsolete, but maybe we just leave the whole thing alone and don't get any further into this at this point. Unless you want to go back to John and ask him. I just don't think, you know, looking at it really quickly, I don't see any statutes on common law marriage in Connecticut. So I don't think there is such a thing here. And
John didn't raise an issue.
Okay, I just.
I think if we're getting into legal issues.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not a lawyer. It's just that I noticed that further on that we did have that
Right.
in there
So
about.
maybe it needs to come out.
Well, he put it. I'm assuming. I don't know who put it in.
I think we took it from the contract.
Did we?
Let's get down there, then I can tell you. I don't want to move around too much because my computer has a hard time keeping up with
Sorry.
Zoom has a hard time keeping up with this.
Okay.
All right, so where were we? All right, so the issue, the highlighted here. Is everyone okay with changing it to 3 after 3 months, you can start using sick time instead of the probationary period? I think it's far more reasonable, and it works better for the library than having to scramble to find time to cover a sick day.
great.
I believe we left this alone in the short-term disability because this is the town's policy, so we didn't touch it. If the town decides to update it, then we would come back and update it as well. All right, group insurance, the only thing he did was no, I'm sorry, he left it as we did. So recognizing that we don't have any say over the insurance anymore, only the town does. So he's removed the town of Bethel by majority of full-time town employees and now just listed as the town, which is the current practice, and I believe that everyone in town has the same insurance now anyway. Then that's it. Unless anybody see anything that I may have missed?
So I have a couple questions. Did we vote? I think our only vote last time was to refer this to John Shea. I don't think we voted to refer this to the full board or whatever the proper terminology is. Does anybody recall that? I don't think we've done anything formally because we were waiting for a final version to be
But I believe you are correct.
Okay, so do we need a motion to that effect to recommend the revisions to the full board? I don't know if I think we typically do that as a group.
Yeah, you have to, somebody has to make a recommendation.
I'll make a
So-
recommendation.
Recommendation to bring the revised personnel policy to the board for vote. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yes.
Do we need a second on that?
I'll second it.
Who said that?
Robin,
Okay, thank you, Robin.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good job. Motion carries. Unfortunately, one question I had for Megan was whether we had ever gone over this in any depth with the board, and the answer was no. So the next meeting, Mary, may not be one of your 15 or 20-minute meetings.
Well, that'll be up to you guys.
And maybe we should talk briefly while we're still on this part of the agenda about how to present it to the board. Now they've not seen, have they not seen any version of the amendments, Megan?
I can check and tell you. 1 second.
I didn't see anything about it being sent.
Well, I can see what the board packet had, so let me check and see if it was in the board packet. If we did that back in June,
So in June, we sent it out as it was at that point before John Shea looked at it.
I'm just trying to figure out which meeting it would have
Oh,
been.
I'm sorry, I thought you were saying we did it. You were
Oh, no, I'm just trying to check, so.
discussed in June, I believe. And I think that's when we voted to send it to John.
Just scroll down. No, we did not, because we did not send up a copy to the board as a whole.
So they get a copy and then we vote on it the following month, right? Is that how we do it?
And I will send this out ahead of the board packet. I'll most likely,
A separate email.
I'm gonna remove John's notes and accept them, and then I will send it out to the board by Friday.
Okay.
And it'll be on the agenda for discussion.
Yes, and then we can't vote on it for the following month.
Okay, so does anybody have any thoughts about how this thing that's taken us 6 months to get to this point can be presented to a large group of other people that haven't been involved? You know, it's not like we're tweaking it. We're really doing some major overhauls. You know, my desire would be to try to anything that's still a major change or shift. You know, a lot of what we did was housekeeping. Megan, do you want to wait till back?
I'll be right there.
Robin, I'm having trouble.
Yes, Robin, you were breaking
You're
up.
cut up. You're
That
breaking up
last-
in your speech.
Sorry, I'll wait till Megan sits down and I can.
I guess they all put them to digest, but
Robin, what were you asking?
So my concern about presenting or discussing this and presenting it to the board is that it took us so much effort. We certainly don't want to go through a similar process with the full board where we're evaluating every change that we see. So I think if we can limit the discussion or the overview to anything that's really like a major change in the policy as opposed to the tweakings that we've done throughout, we'd be a lot better off.
Would
I
it-
don't know.
Would it be easier if I drafted a cover letter, had you read it and approve it, and then attach that with the document stating that everybody needs to read the document, these are the major section changes, and bring questions to the meeting instead of at the meeting going paragraph by paragraph through the document?
I think that would be great if you could do that, because that way, if people are interested enough, they'll make the effort to do that. And they can come with questions. It would be impossible for them, if they haven't read it ahead of time, to absorb really anything.
All right, so then in that case, I have a couple other big projects this week. I will draft it for you and send it to you Monday for your revisions and approval, and then send it to the whole board early next week. I don't want to rush it. I'd rather take time to go through it bit by bit. So
Right.
I'll do that and then get that to you.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's perfect, because their heads will be spinning. They're not going to want to read everything either, and that we can point out the things that they really should be looking at.
Okay.
So thank you.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the next policy. Is everybody ready? Okay, so let me just share. Oh, I didn't share the right thing. Hold on. Share. All right. Excuse my internet. Internet's a little slow. Give me a second. It keeps loading the wrong document. Let me shut everything else down.
We got a new laptop, and somehow all the comments are George's now. So
All right.
he did not in fact review this policy.
All right. I closed everything else now, so let me see if I can share the right document now. All right, buildings and grounds.
This is the one you sent us this morning.
Yes, updated. So Robin and I discussed it. Robin made some recommendations, so those have been incorporated in. And a lot of it is really cleaning up the language. It was a bit wordy previously. So Tom and I had taken some out, and then Robin had gone through and polished it. So has everybody read this policy?
Excuse me.
All right, there's not a lot of changes to it. All we really did was clean it up a bit, take out, let me just scroll down to that. Take out the Apple Blossom Room, which is currently now the Friends bookseller. And we've
Is that what it is?
it took us a little while, but yes,
I could not figure that out. I'm like, where's the apple blossom?
yes.
Okay.
And we've added in the Sealy Room, which has become a very popular location in the library. So we wanted to include that, especially since we have cleaned it up and made it a nice meeting space. So did anybody have any questions on this document or any of the changes that we've made?
I hate to even raise my hand. I only have one.
It is only down. Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. It is under the general guidelines, so section 2,
Okay,
and it is, let me roll down, section 2.10, which talks about the following are forbidden on library premises. Alcoholic beverages. Now, I know that in order for us to do our wine tasting, we have to get, we have to get approval from the first selectman.
Yeah.
So I know this is for the general, not the specifics, but do we need to have anything in the document that ever says that, just so we don't have somebody come in and be like, well, your policy says you don't have alcoholic beverages, but,
Thoughts? I never thought about that.
That's a good point, yeah.
Well, it's just that somebody brought it up to me a couple of years ago.
can you give me the number again?
Sure,
I
it's
said that's
2.10,
Under section 2.
under section 2,
Well, it
Okay,
should
got
be for fundraising purposes only.
By the library.
by the library, no, but by the
So how about we
library.
say, instead say outs, wait, 2.
2.10
Okay, so the following,
are forbidden on library premises.
I think we should leave it that way, and then we should add an except, and we can come up with some language, because if we start by accepting the library entirely, then we could theoretically smoke and bring guns and things.
Oh, good, let's.
Tia, you made our meetings more interesting.
What's that? I'm sorry, I missed what I'm having a hard time hearing.
I'm sorry, what I was
So-
saying, we shouldn't just accept the library entirely from this paragraph, because then we could bring guns and smoke and things.
Correct.
So what if we take alcoholic beverages out of this statement, make a separate statement regarding alcoholic beverages?
That's kind of what I was thinking, was that, you know, it's for the general public, it's not permissible. And you don't want to leave it just for fundraising, because if you remember when we did our sneak peek thing,
All right,
Careful
okay.
with the word this.
yeah, and, you know, Lord knows, we should have,
And then we should say, and during all meetings.
and during all meetings, all right. But I just thought to bring that up. And it's not just, okay, so, right. So I don't know once, and forgive me, because we've been going round and round about this in another organization. The whole issue of marijuana, once it becomes, I know we talk about smoking, but I'm not sure, you know, I'm just throwing it out that at some point we may have to come back and think about that as something to be worried about people doing on premises as well.
Consumable marijuana, is that what you're saying? Not smoke?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Were you saying consumable marijuana?
Yes, consumable, thank you. I couldn't remember the right word, edibles, whatever.
I guess the same thing,
Drinkables, whatever.
All right, well, we also have on here 2.19, all meetings must adhere to federal, state, and local health department guidelines. So that would require getting a liquor permit for alcohol on the premises. And our patron policy also doesn't allow for alcohol within the building by patrons. So if we want to put a quick statement in separate about alcohol, we could do that right after the following are forbidden. So does anybody have any recommended language for how to address alcohol?
I thought we should leave alcohol. I mean, I'm going to throw this out there, that we should leave it as is, and then say, provided, however, that something like this, that the library and friends events, alcohol may be served at library and friends events subject to town permit or something like that. You rather like have a general statement and then the exception.
So the exception,
I can give you the language afterwards if you want, if the concept's okay with the group.
I'd actually really like the board to approve the language.
Okay.
Just because I think this is one of those few that can be nitpicked.
So we think we're going to do this in one shot today. That'd be great.
I have 6 more policies that I have to bring before you
Oh,
guys
no.
this year, so I would love to.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the only thing I saw in the whole thing.
Well, why
I'll
don't we
Here's
take
my-
Robin's wording and put it in
So
there?
it's the following are forbidden on library premises.
So I would put back in alcoholic beverages.
So why don't we put in alcoholic beverages are permitted? Well, because there also too is, we might have an event here, say an art gallery, who wants to serve alcohol,
Exactly.
and they get the permit, so
So what if
maybe.
we said alcohol beverages are permitted with,
Alcoholic beverages are only permitted after hours with a state permit and approval from the director and library board.
Oh, well, you have to get the approval from the first selectman.
No, I know, it's with, but you have,
It's a
that's the
state
permit.
permit.
So you get the permit, and then you still need the director and library board approval.
But if you're just serving, the permit is for like the wine tasting. If you're just serving as part of an event,
Oh, I just mean whatever the proper thing is.
Oh,
I'm not literally saying state, I don't have the language, I'm just.
oh, I'm
An
sorry,
idea. So-
my bad, I thought you were
Oh,
saying
no, so
specific.
alcoholic, let's say alcoholic beverages are permitted
With the appropriate
with,
approvals?
permitted for after hours events,
provided that
With the appropriate,
events,
approvals or authorizations, does that make sense?
appropriate,
permits and approval, permits, I guess.
the
Permits.
appropriate permits and approval
There you go.
from the library director and, I can't click on this one, director and the library board of directors.
Want to read that back?
Yeah. Alcoholic beverages are permitted for after-hours events with the appropriate permits and approval from the library director and the library board of directors.
I think I would say may be permitted, because a little, it might be something.
How about changing permitted to allowed?
I couldn't hear what
Yeah,
you
because
said.
you,
She said
Yeah.
change permitted to allowed.
Alcoholic beverages, I have may be, so instead of alcoholic beverages may be permitted, you want me to change it to alcoholic beverages may be allowed?
yeah, that makes sense because then we talk about permits
We
afterwards.
might not allow
Okay,
it.
allowed. All right, let me blow this up so you can see it a little bit better. All right. Does that make it better for everybody?
Oh, thank you.
I don't really need to see the notes on this one, so it's a lot easier.
Be allowed for.
So that means we can have wine at our board meetings? With the appropriate permits and approval from the library director and board?
I gotta talk to the director.
Who do we have to get the approval from?
So this does mean that people will have to apply in advance.
Right.
They
Yes.
can't be applying 2 weeks beforehand, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I think so. Just good catch there.
Anything else in this document that should be addressed?
You just want to take out the words add new section after 2.1.
Oh, this is so I know, I have to renumber the whole thing. This
Okay.
document was not done with the bullet formatting.
Right.
Someone manually typed in everything, so I'm gonna have to go through and manually change each one.
Okay, and then I noticed that in 2.7, my $1 million, I'm missing a zero. If you just want to get that before we,
In the announcement. What's missing from this?
another zero. See, after, the first time I talk about $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
In the announcement,
It's
Okay.
100, instead of
Okay.
3 zeros, it's 2.
got it.
Okay.
And then, are we moving on?
I'm just waiting, yeah, if anybody has anything else.
Well, George asked this great question on section 4, hours of use, under 4.4. It talks under special circumstances, use of meeting rooms outside the library's regular hours may be agreed to by the library director. Any meeting or event extending beyond the hours of the library must have prearranged qualified staff member in attendance. And George asks, who pays for this? And that's a good question. Is that something, I don't know that we've had a circumstance, so I don't know if we have a practice, but.
No, because none of my staff
Yeah, they're not
ever
gonna.
volunteer to stay after.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we can't pay, we can't pay them on top of their salary.
Right.
Because only salaried employees can work after hours. So we don't have a general practice of doing this, and I'd be very wary of allowing this unless it was myself.
So what happens then? Are we going, you said nobody would volunteer to do it? Or
We,
they,
Well, we can't pay them beyond their regular,
so if it never was going to happen, are we going to say this?
no, I mean, it has happened, but it's me who's volunteered to stay, and I don't get paid extra for my time, so
Okay,
there's only 3 people who can really do this, and we're all exempt employees, so there is no such thing as overtime for us.
okay,
And we often volunteer if it's something that we feel would benefit the library anyway. It's very rare for us to volunteer to stay for a private group.
Okay. But can't you offer the other 2 people comp time?
Yes.
Yeah. You work it out on an individual basis?
Yeah.
okay. George is satisfied with that answer.
thank you, George.
Were there any other comments that need to be addressed?
In 5.2, I was just thinking of, there are probably groups that have just e-addresses now, or, email addresses. They don't necessarily have a post office box.
A lot of the groups use their personal address because you need to be a Bethel resident. So most of these groups, they find someone in the group who lives in Bethel and they use their address.
Okay,
We need a way to verify they're a local resident, so we have to have a mailing address.
And then George was asking on 7.3 about the security deposit, saying that the Parks and Rec had a $200 security deposit, and we were asking for $100. I think your question is,
do we want to increase it to be the same? And then secondarily, this is only for the community room. I know the other rooms their capacity is fairly small, but the boardroom, I guess, holds 25, right?
The second floor boardroom holds probably over 50. It has a with furniture and without furniture capacity.
Okay. So it's a 2-parter. Do we want to increase the security deposit, and should it only apply to the community room?
My preference is not to, because a lot of the groups booking these spaces are like the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. And, Parks and Rec, they're for profit, where we are not, so.
Well, the Parks and Rec, I should clarify, Parks and Rec is the entity or the part of the town that's designated to handle rentals of rooms.
Yes.
So it's really, they do it for the town. So it's all rooms in the municipal center, it's Bennett's Park, it's Cower. So it's every town facility. If you want to rent it, a room, for example, you have to go through. So it's not just Parks and Rec as a for-profit entity, it's really the town. But I mean, that may not change the discussion. I just wanted to point that out.
I also want to say that we haven't collected a security deposit in the entire time I've been here.
yeah, I'm sure.
We've never felt the need to. So I
Do you have many outside groups that use the AV equipment?
not without a staff member present. The staff member does all the work,
Okay, because I was going to say, it's like the thing that would be most likely to be damaged.
which would cost a lot more than $100.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure $100 deposit really does much for us, especially since we don't do a lot of after hours. There's always a staff member here operating the equipment. And our past practice has not been to collect a deposit.
Do we even need to require a security deposit?
Maybe, but the library reserves the right.
Yeah, because this sort of implies that you're going to, and I agree, if we haven't done it, why don't we just say we reserve the right to do it, and,
Plus, we have to treat everybody the same. If you're
Right.
gonna collect it from one, you have to collect it from
Well, I think if you have somebody maybe who's in the past you've had issue with, and that's when you would want to say, you know, to continue to preserve this room, we'll need a security deposit.
right,
So the library, how about just the library may require?
right.
All right, the library may require a security deposit. Okay,
And then take out is required after $100. And Megan, I think there are other places that I or the policy may already see that you have, when you apply, you have to pay a security deposit. So you might want to just check security deposit,
all right, sure.
you know, do a find, see if there's any other spot where it says you have to submit it, the application.
Okay, so I'll go through the document after.
And then on frequency of use, it just talks about rooms. So, I mean, do we care about limiting frequency of use for the grounds?
We don't get a lot of grounds requests, and most of the time it's the chamber requesting it. Maybe we get 2 a year that are not.
Okay, so then in 8.2, it probably, library premises should just be rooms, right?
In order to allow the library, any group will be limited to meetings in the library premises. So two.
Because I think when we talk about premises, we use the word facilities or premises to apply to everything. So,
You know, is it okay if we leave that? And then that way, just in case it does become an issue.
sure.
2 a month. I'm sorry, I was thinking of it more as in a year, but 2 a month, I think then it should probably. And I mean, at this point too, it's most reservations get run by me anyway, but. So if we keep premises here, do we need to change something somewhere else?
I think I haven't seen premises before. I think we might refer to them. We say rooms throughout, mostly we say rooms and grounds. We might say facility somewhere.
Okay, so I'll take,
I don't think we ever say premises.
all right, so. All right, so you want me to remove premises and add,
Why don't you say,
Well, you do use premises, you say, when you talk about what's illegal and forbidden, and then you're not responsible for personal items left on the premises before and after.
okay,
So we do use the word, why don't we just leave in premises, and that covers the whole thing, don't you think?
yeah, I see like in our purpose section, we talk about facilities, but that's all right. It's nitpicky. That's premises is fine.
okay. All right, was there anything else?
In 9.5, the last sentence, I just want to understand what the point is of that. So we're saying, is that for inclement weather? Like if we're going to change our hours or?
Yeah, so
we
like
might
if
open
it's,
late
if it
or close early.
snows and we close the library early, we need a contact person that we can notify. The library's closed down. We should notify them, but I see why it's written this way. It's to
This
take the
covers us if we-
responsibility
if we
off of us in
forget.
case there's an issue. So I would leave it written that way. I see why it sounds awkward, but at least this way, if something does happen, it falls on the group to be responsible.
Well, I mean, it could also cover unforeseen circumstances. Like how would they know? Oh, so you're saying they should call like the day of the meeting, make sure that it's still on? Is that generally?
Yeah,
That's-
well, if it's snowing out, they should probably give us a call before they come to verify we're staying open to allow for their
Right.
meeting.
Right, but what other unforeseen circumstance, like, I guess if there's a flood or a gas leak or something, one of the many things that have happened to you.
Yeah, yeah. Does anybody want to change anything about this?
No, it's, okay, I wanted to have a better understanding of what it was aimed at.
I do too.
I love that you took the piano out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I love that you took out the piano.
Tom took that out right away.
And the thing about tuning for the event, that was the thing, because people were arguing with us all the time about that, remember?
Really?
Yeah, because it was like, no, you should be paying for it. It's like, no.
I've been in libraries where we've had lots of disputes. It got to the point where anytime we booked a room, we charged a piano tuning fee
Yeah, I believe it.
because it gets very expensive.
It is $300 or $400 easily.
If you could find a piano tuner.
All right, any other sections that need to be discussed?
Can I ask one quick question?
I'm looking right at you.
I know you were. Okay, under 10.9, it talks about whenever a meeting in the community room extends beyond the library's closing time, the group authorized must ensure that everything's locked. And I think that makes perfect sense. But don't we say someplace else that events have to be done by the closing time?
Yeah, this just covers if it does run late or if for some reason the staff member stays, it's just covering.
Okay,
I mean, the truth is it's the staff member's responsibility to close all the doors.
That's what I thought.
This is just extra security within.
Okay, that's fine,
In case somebody finds it funny to prop a door as they're leaving, this covers all bases.
Okay.
My last question was on 9.6. Do we want to include any kind of appeal procedure?
Which one?
9.6,
Oh,
Say-
Becca? 9.
rejecting an if a group's application is rejected, you can appeal to the board.
Because she's bringing up, I can't, 9.6?
Is it 9.6 is what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. My internet connection looks fine. I don't know what was the
Yeah,
problem.
you keep fading in and out. It's hard to hear.
Maybe it's me. Maybe I need a cookie.
You do need a cookie. Come on down.
All right, 9.6, what did you want us to address?
The last paragraph where
If a
there's an
group-
appeal to the board, if you reject their application, do we want to get into anything about like how quickly we have to respond, or like we have all kinds of very obviously fancy provisions about grievance procedures and appeals in our personnel policy, but do we want to get into like how someone, besides writing and
I would recommend not, because you don't want another reason to start having to call emergency board meetings. I would say leave it as it is.
Okay. Well, we can address it when we get to it if it happens. Have you rejected anybody ever for one of these requests?
Not in my time, but we have, because it violates the policy.
Correct.
People want to run a program and they want to charge a fee for entry.
Yep.
And so we've rejected applications because they don't follow our policy, but we've never rejected someone who met all of our requirements.
Okay, good.
I have to say, I was happy that this was very clear about for-profit organizations or you can't charge a fee, because we've had a couple of times people have wanted to come in and like run a film festival and
No,
charge
we've
people.
found ways to compromise, like
Yeah,
book events or the author events. You can't charge for the event, but you can charge for the book.
correct.
You can't require they purchase the book. So
The
things like
event has
that.
to be free.
Yeah, no, I think that was good.
Yeah, people can make a voluntary donation, but you can't require the donation.
Right. So I think this was good.
All right, anything else? Someone want to make a motion to bring this to the board for vote?
I so moved.
I will second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody have anything else they want to discuss before we wrap up the meeting?
So we will bring this also to the October meeting.
Yes.
And you're gonna send it out ahead of time so they have time to digest
I'm not
it.
going to send this one out as early as I send out the personnel
Do
policy.
this separate.
This is a short one. We didn't make a lot of changes to it. I'll send that out with the board packet.
But otherwise we'll let the general be here forever.
Robin, do you want to wrap up the meeting, or do you have anything else you want to cover?
No, I'm good. Anybody want to adjourn?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion to adjourn.
Right.
I'll second it.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's
Okay.
4:16.
Yep, 4:16. Megan, do you do the minutes?
Say that again?
Do you do the minutes?
I will type up the minutes. I will send them to you for approval this evening, and then you give me a thumbs up, or send me edits, and then I'll submit them tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Relatively painless. We got a lot
Do our
done.
homework. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. A lot of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, that personnel